Today on Larry King Now, meet Marc Maron, how the comic turned his life and career around working out of his garage. Why the garage?
That's because I have a garage. Where else am I going to do it? It doesn't cost me anything. It's a short walk to work. The beautiful thing about failure, Larry, is that, you know, when you honestly let go of your dreams,
of course,
it's heartbreaking, but you feel better. And then all of a sudden they happen, and you're like, oh, well, this is a surprise.
Plus,
yeah, one thing I learned is you can't replace cocaine with a woman. Because you will exhaust the woman. Yeah, you know, if you get addicted to a person, eventually they will be drained and leave a husk.
That's all ahead on Larry King Now. Our guest today on Larry King Now is Marc Maron. The stand-up comic has been in the business for over 25 years, has found recent success with his own interview-based podcast, WTF with Marc Maron. I was on that show.
You are? Almost. We haven't put it up yet. It's going to happen.
Oh, well, put it up.
I will.
It was good. The podcast is an online sensation, averages about 2.5 to 3 million downloads a month. Now he has a TV show called Maron, which was renewed for a second season on IFC, a memoir titled Attempting Normal, and a comedy special, Thinking Pain, which is available exclusively on Netflix. How do you account for this current success? What happened to you?
I don't know. I think I just became ready. You know, after you do something long enough, you go through a lot of different phases. You don't know if something's going to happen for you. And then, you know, when it does happen, the best you can hope for is you can handle it. And I think I just hit that, you know, it took me 25 years, but I can handle it.
What happened?
Well, I did the podcast in my garage. You know, it started, I was working in radio, and I got fired. And the company wasn't smart enough to kick us out of the building.
Air America?
Air America.
That was very serious radio, though, Air America.
We did a morning show. We were doing straight-up satire,
the Liberal
comedy.
Network.
Yeah, the Liberal Network. But it was mostly political humor, but that's where I learned how to do it. But I'd been fired twice from there. And then I went back a third time with a new CEO, because I needed money to get out of a divorce, you understand.
I've heard.
Yeah. And so they fired us after a year of what we were doing there. They ran out of money. And they didn't kick us out of the building, so we started breaking into the studio and using the equipment. My partner figured out how to upload a podcast, and I said, this is what we're going to do. I didn't listen to any podcasts. I knew people did them. We committed to a schedule, 2 days a week, and we just let the show evolve.
Now, why haven't you played me yet?
I'm a little backed up, Larry, and yeah.
It's all right.
It's going to require a lot of editing to make you, you know.
Yeah, make me good. I know it's hard. How do you, when you do a podcast, how do the receivers know when to get you?
I put it out every Monday and Thursday, so they're up there, and I've done that for, you know, coming up on 4 years, every Monday and Thursday, because I think the consistency and the regularity.
But initially, how did they know you were there?
It was crazy. It was, you know, I got very into social networking. My guests would tweet out things. I would do Facebook. I would get an email list going, and as my guests became higher profile, it brought some attention to the medium and to the show.
Did you know you were an interviewer?
No idea at all. I don't even think I am an interviewer. I think
What are you?
I talk to people. I had a lot of problems early on. You know, I was cynical and bitter, and I felt like I had failed in my business, so I needed help. So why not just ask celebrities to come in and listen to my problems? And that became sort of the style that I found that if I offer up a lot of myself, they kind of meet me halfway, and it becomes a very intense
I remember
exchange.
it was very engaging at the house. But you say you do it in the garage. You did it at my house.
Well, you're special, Larry. I make a trip for you, even though you yelled at me.
I yelled because you were late.
But that was not the time
You're
I had.
broadcasting. You could never be late.
No, but I had the wrong time.
Oh, all right.
You were funny, though. I walk in, you were like, you're late. And I'm like, how late? You're like, 15 minutes late. I'm like, well, what do you want to do? He's like, I don't know. And he says, let's do it.
What is WTF? That's the podcast, WTF?
Yeah, well, initially, the idea of what the f*** was, to me, I thought, you know, what's the most important philosophical question of our time? And I thought, what the f*** is that? That's it.
Probably is.
Yeah. So the theme, initially, I didn't know what the show was going to be, and we thought maybe that would be a theme. And then that sort of went away. Once I moved to L.A. and set up shop in my garage, it just became an interview show. I was doing some third acts that were comedy pieces, but then it just became about the conversations, and we just left the name.
Why the garage?
That's because I have a garage. Where else am I going to do it? It doesn't cost me anything. It's a short walk to work.
But you get guests to come to the garage?
They all come to the garage.
Mel Brooks came to your garage?
Well, I went to him. You know, you guys,
Oh, Reiner went to your garage?
No, but you're talking about 90-years.
So Who goes to your garage?
Name some other guys: Shandwing, Richard Lewis, Conan O'Brien, Bryan Cranston, John Hamm, all of them. They all come to
Where is the garage?
It's in Highland Park. It's next to Pasadena. It's up in the hills. Some of them are surprised. They don't know what to expect. But the people that know my show, Molly Shannon's been to the garage, Catherine O'Hara was up. They've all go up there. The people I go to are people that are either too busy, or I don't want, or they're at an age where I don't want them to run around.
I remember with me, is there a car in the garage?
No car.
No car.
No, it's an old garage. It's got a floor. It's got all my stuff in it. It's very cozy. But Cranston came up there, and he seemed surprised. Like a lot of times publicists, they tell me go to this place, and they get out, and they're like, "This is it," and I'm walking him back to my garage.
He's a pretty good actor.
He's a great actor.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's like, "Okay, so this is what we're doing." I'm like, "Yeah, John Hamm was here." And he's like, "Oh yeah, Hamm was here? All right." So that got the stamp of approval.
How do you make money off WTF?
I was going to ask you for something. Over time, the model sort of evolved. No one really knew how to make money with podcasting, but now that terrestrial radio is sort of phasing out, a lot of those advertisers have come over. We have an app. Only the most recent 50 are available for free, and if they want to get the other 400, they got to get the premium app for a few bucks.
Do you sell them? I mean, let's say the sponsor is Coca-Cola.
Right.
Do you go to Coca-Cola and say, buy my pod? How does it work? I know the radio stations, there are salespeople.
Right. Well, my partner is the production side of it. So, and as the podcast became popular, we were able to attract a lot of, outside of the box advertisers. We had some big advertisers that you hear on terrestrial radio, but like HBO, certain shows that will advertise, record labels will advertise. So we book out about 3 or 4 spots a show with the advertising. We got the app revenue. We also do live shows. We have some merchandise, and we sell some episodes as well.
So I remember it was a conversation with you. I wouldn't call it.
Is it all coming back to you?
Well, yeah, it's coming back to me. Well, I do a lot of. I've done 60,000 people, but it was more. It wasn't so much an interview as just you guys talking.
That's what we did. I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know what mood you were in. I think it worked out. We
worked out fine.
It was great. We talked about Gleason a lot. I'm a big fan of Jackie Gleason. And that's the way I do it. I don't know if it's the right way. You're a professional. Like, I'll have an idea of who somebody is, and basically I enter with that. And then I just let the conversation unfold. I'm careful not to avoid, like if somebody, cured cancer or won an Oscar, I want to make sure I bring that up. But outside of that...
Yeah, it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, right.
I want to talk about the other things, the book and their stand-ups. Marc has described himself as angry and bitter. Is he really? We'll talk about that next. Don't go away. Marc Maron, he's got a TV show, a book, a podcast, a stand-up special. Where's the stand-up special?
Thinky Pain is on Netflix, Netflix Instant. Yeah.
So you can get it anytime.
You can get it anytime. I think that was the way to do it.
With a studio audience?
There was an audience. I did it in a small club. I wanted to do it very specifically, intimately. I wanted to do it like a stand-up club. I did it. You remember the old Village Gate?
Sure.
I did it. What was used to be the basement showroom, the main showroom in the Village Gate. It's now a place called Le Poisson Rouge. We looked at a few places. I wanted low ceilings. I wanted it to have an organic feel. I had some history at that venue when I was younger.
I used to watch Mel Torme there. It was a great singer.
Yeah, it was a great venue, and they did comedy when I was starting out.
I think Lenny Bruce worked there.
Yep, I think so. And the DeLugoff family owned it, Art DeLugoff. And so I was in that room. I had about 250 people, and I did 2 shows. I did an hour and a half each. We took the entire special from the second show. I was very careful not to cut to the audience. I wanted it to feel intimate. And that's why I did it with Netflix, so there's no commercials. You can look at it whenever you want. And it's an hour and a half. I did a full hour and a half.
And is there a concept to it?
The concept is me and my struggle.
Is it a bitter performer? Are you angry? No. There are angry performers.
I used to be. I think I used to, I did...
Like Lewis Black is probably the greatest angry.
Well, he's it's a great archetype.
Affected.
Yes, the curmudgeon, the crank is a gifted stereo archetype. There are guys, you got to have it naturally.
Right, you got to come on stage.
Yeah, I need, the world's against me. I wasn't like that. I was genuinely angry, and because of that, I wasn't a big ticket seller.
You were bitter.
I was bitter.
And what?
Well, you know, you work hard, you want to do something, you think you're an original, and you think you got something to say, but, you know, you're not bringing people in. And, you know, I did a lot of television as a stand-up, and I wasn't selling tickets. And by the time I started the podcast, you know, it was over. You know, I was out of wife, I was out of money, my career was stalled, and, you know, it kind of happened out of desperation. And through the conversations that I had with other entertainers about their experience, I started to kind of get less bitter, to open my heart a little more, to become what I used to be when I was a kid, when my grandfather owned a hardware store, and he'd have guys hanging around talking. I used to love listening to him. I got into that, and, you know, getting entertained by people's stories, and it kind of grounded me. It kind of humbled me.
So what you've done is made failure a plus.
Absolutely. There's no question. I had no expectation. The beautiful thing about failure, Larry, is that, you know, when you honestly let go of your dreams,
of course,
it's heartbreaking, but you feel better, and then all of a sudden they happen, and you're like, oh, well, this is a surprise.
Now, you had problems like your liquor, right? Were you alcoholic?
Drugs, alcohol. Yeah, cocaine and booze. Good times.
Do they go together, by the way?
Well, one will let you drink a lot more. If you're doing cocaine and drinking, you can stay up for a lot more drinking.
Did you stop both at the same time?
Yeah, I stopped. You know, I was fortunate that, like, I was a professional drug user. I mixed it up. You know, I didn't hit too dramatic a bottom, but I was slowly killing myself. And, you know, fortunately for me, you know, I was in a fairly unhappy marriage, and I was drinking and using drugs. And a woman appeared at a club, this beautiful woman, who said, you know, I think I can get you help, you know, and steered me towards recovery. And I don't know if I was really thinking about quitting drinking or drugging, but I knew that I would follow her anywhere.
Where did she take you to?
You know, to AA and to, you know, into meetings.
Are you friends with her now?
No, we're divorced. That was the second.
You married?
It's not. Yeah, one thing I learned is you can't replace cocaine with a woman, because you will exhaust the woman. Yeah, you know, if you get addicted to a person, eventually they will be drained and leave a husk.
The only thing I was ever addicted to was tobacco. I
loved it.
Till I had a heart attack, and then I stopped that day.
Yeah, well, that's good. I am on nicotine lozenge right now. I haven't smoked a cigarette in over 10 years, but I still eat the nicotine candy.
You still feel that your body needs it?
I don't know if it needs it. It makes me feel better. You know what I mean? You gotta take what you can.
Do you ever want to go back?
To drinking and drugging or cigarettes?
Yeah. All three.
Well, no, I think the gift of actually, you know, getting it in your head and learning how to be a sober person is that, you know, I don't think about it. I don't obsess about it. I don't want it. You know, I've been through 2 divorces, a bankruptcy, and some other pain, and I didn't think to drink.
Well, that's what you call thicky pain, right?
Thinky pain.
Thinky pain.
Yeah.
Your approach to stand-up is not conventional, right?
I don't know. Is it not? I think
I haven't seen your stand-up act. I will watch it.
I used to do.
I will turn on my Netflix and watch it.
No, I think you'd enjoy it. It's story-based. You know, I spent a lot of time.
Just tell stories.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's stand-up. I mean, you know, you watch any of the old guys, you know, Shelley Berman, Newhart, Cosby, I don't know. I used to tell jokes, and they were structured, but they were more my jokes. But any good story is filled with jokes.
Of course. There are punchlines throughout. Yeah.
And I think that some of the greatest stand-up that's ever been was long-form stand-up, and that's what I do. It's very personal. It's not generalized. I chose at some point to... you know, when I did politics, I realized I'm not really angry about politics. I'm just angry. So why don't we get to the heart of that?
You ever see Alan King do a monologue?
I have.
Brilliant.
Survived by his wife.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
Cover the couch with cellophane. You know. Coming up, Mark and I discuss his most famous interviews, and we'll do that when we return. We're back with Marc Maron, a multi-talented guy. He's got so many things going for you. You must be pinching yourself, right? You turn around in your life?
Yeah, I'm just happy to be working, you know. I mean, it gets to a certain point, having gone what I've gone through, when people ask, what do you want? Well, I'd like to not die broke, and I'd like to have insurance. Those are my big dreams. If that's possible, that'd be good.
How did the thing with Conan start? He guested with you, you guessed on him a lot. How did that begin?
Well, Conan, when he started, I was still in New York, and I think I appeared as a stand-up twice, and it was my dream at that time to be a panel guest, you know, like Richard Lewis was with Letterman. And, you know, I did all right for Conan, and I was in town, and I was there at the beginning, and he started to have me on his panel, and I became the guy that if another guest fell out or they couldn't book in, you know, they'd call me on a short notice, and I'd usually have at least a half-baked story of some kind. So I did a lot of filling in, and it just stayed that way.
And then he was on your podcast, right?
Yeah, years later. You know, after doing his show for a decade or more, you know, I'd never really talked to him. Your
most popular interviews are with fellow comics, right? I mean, do you enjoy that the most?
I think so. I've been interviewing musicians now as well, and some filmmakers. I like talking to anybody who's interesting and has a good story, really. But comedians, you got a kindred spirit thing. You know, it's like, I know with comics we sacrificed a lot to pursue the life that we have, and I find it to be a pretty noble profession. And I just and there's a common language there. You know, we're freaks in a way. You know, we don't.
Isn't Mel Brooks the funniest man alive?
Unbelievable.
There's probably no one funnier than that all the time.
Yeah, there was a big story with I think we got a couple minutes. So I go interview him. I go to his office. I was lucky. It was just him and I. I think if there was one other person there, he would have put on a show. But he was, you know, was locked in. It was a beautiful interview. And he takes a liking to me. He says, "You're great. You know, you should really do this on television." I said, "Well, you should make some calls for me." But, you know, I was joking. But he says, "You should talk to Carl." And I go, "Carl Reiner?" He's like, "Yeah, we talk all the time. I'm over there every night. You should talk to Carl." I would love to talk to Carl. So I say to Mel, I say, "Well, how is Carl?" And Mel goes, "He's about 80%. Okay, so he cut to, you know, he walks me out of the building. You know, 3 weeks later, he sets me up with Carl Reiner. So I go to Carl Reiner's house. And, you know, I set up the mics. I'm greeted by George Shapiro, you know, his manager and nephew, who's in his 70s. And, you know, I set up the mics. You know, Carl sits down. Shapiro sits across from us, immediately falls asleep, like within seconds. He's sleeping during the interview. And then, you know, in the middle of our interview, you know, out of nowhere, Carl said, well, right at the beginning, I say, "You and Mel, you spend a lot of time together. What do you do?" He looks at me and goes, "It has something to do with chicken feathers. Maybe I'll tell you." I'm like, I don't know what's happening. And then in the middle of our interview, he goes, "You know how many Jews are involved in Broadway musicals?" I'm like, I have no idea. He goes, "A lot. I saw a television show. There's a list of Jews at the end, right?" And he goes, "I'm going to show you that list." And I'm like, okay. And so I do the interview for an hour, and I swear, right when I turn the mics off, right, Shapiro wakes up and goes, "That was a great interview. That's a good manager. We saw him sleeping." So then Carl picks up 2 remotes, and I got a 91-year-old man with 2 remotes. He's going to show me the Jews in the list. So he's playing with remotes, and I'm like, this is not going to go well. And then Shapiro out of nowhere goes, "Is there ice cream?" So now, somewhat, you know, then they're handing out Weight Watchers ice cream sandwiches. We're eating ice cream sandwiches. Carl Reiner starts the show at the beginning, so I'm like, how long am I going to be here? It's a 2-hour show for the list of Jews, right? And then the phone rings. And Reiner picks it up. He goes, "Hello? Yeah, it was very pleasant. He's still here." And he looks at me and goes, "It's Mel Brooks." And I'm like, "What?" And I go, "Hello?" And all I hear is Mel Brooks go, "80%, right?" And I go, "Maybe 85. He's like, "All right, maybe 85. Put Carl back on the phone." And then they talk about, I think they were talking about whether or not Carl could roast a chicken or not. And then I remember, like, I forgot to ask him about the chicken feathers, right? So I turned the mics back on. And I say, "You know, you mentioned something about chicken feathers." He's like, "Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Me and Mel Brooks." And there's a publicist sitting on the couch. He goes, "Is there a cushion behind you? Could you hand me the cushion?" So Carl Reiner puts his pillow on his lap, and he just starts running his hand over it. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, oh, no, we're off road now. And then he pulls a feather out of the pillow, and he sets it very delicately down on the armrest of the chair, and he looks at me and goes, "I have a lot of these. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I put them in a bag." And so I'm thinking, like, okay, he's out there. And I go, "What does this have to do with you and Mel Brooks?" And he just starts running his hand across the pillow, and he goes, "This is what we do." And he pulls another feather out. It was beautiful. And then I walk out of the house with George Shapiro. We both go into our cars, and he looks at me and goes, "What did Mel Brooks say?" And I said, he said Carl was about 80%. And George says, "He tells the truth."
They are as funny as a twosome as ever.
Great.
And the 2,000-year-old man.
Great.
Which I was the first one ever to play that. I was a disc jockey in Miami, and that's still the funniest album.
Always make you laugh. Mel is so, like, he's just so quick, and it's such a privilege and an amazingly entertaining experience to talk to that guy.
I was at Sid Caesar's house. Sid doesn't talk anymore.
I know, yeah.
And Mel was there, and Carl. Carl greets me at the door and says, "The only problem I have is short-term memory loss." The only problem I have is short-term memory loss. That's pretty funny.
That's very funny.
Do you act at all? You done any theater?
I've done, I'm doing the TV show now, so I'm acting in my own show. I'm playing myself, which I've put a lot of work into that role. And I've done a few little movie things. I was in.
Did you ever, you were in movies?
I was in a couple movies. I was in Almost Famous, Cameron Crowe's movie. I have like 2 lines in that. It's a very powerful scene.
Would you ever want to have a desk and a late night show like the Lettermans and the Conans and the...
Well, I like what you do, and in my concept, like to do what I do in the garage, to have that intimacy. I think the closest model that I could think of would be Snyder's show, the Tomorrow Show.
Tom Snyder.
Yes.
Passed away, sad.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah.
The way that was shot and the way it was done, I'd like to try it that way. I don't want to run a circus.
Yeah, so you don't want a band and
No, it's not really my thing. I think it's more compelling to just really get some authentic conversation.
What do you think of the Fergusons and the Fallons? And
Well,
the
okay.
Kimmels?
Well, I've done all their
lumping them
shows.
here.
Yeah, they're all good guys. I've done all their
Ferguson's
shows.
very funny.
Ferguson's very funny, but as a host, quite honestly, you never know what he's going to come at you with. And his segment producer will talk to you for an hour and ask you everything.
He throws away the cards.
He throws away everything, and then all of a sudden, all right, so it took me 3 times on the show to realize, I'm just going to follow his lead and improvise with him. That's it.
That's what
I think Jimmy Fallon is great. He's very earnest. He's the only guy in television that I think is genuinely having a good time.
My guest is Marc Maron. Marc Maron.
Yeah.
I want to say Maron.
It happens all the time.
And he has a strange fondness for feral cats. We'll talk about that next. We'll be right back. Before we get to the feline thing, children, you don't have children.
I don't.
You're afraid of children, someone told me?
No, I'm not afraid of children. I was a little afraid of being an old dad, but you sort of are an inspiration.
Nothing to be afraid of.
Okay.
Do you have a woman in your life?
I did until we're in a little trouble right now.
What happened now?
I don't know. This is the 3rd one. I think it's me.
Because you'd love being a father.
All right.
There's nothing like it.
Okay.
Nothing like it. I'm telling you the truth. Don't be afraid of it, Mark.
I'm not afraid of it.
It's the first time in your life there's someone totally dependent on you. Think about that.
That's why I have cats.
What's with the cats?
I don't know, man. It's
no
like
Jew likes cats.
I grew up with dogs, and then like a woman gave me a cat once. I got attached to it. What really happened with the cats was I was doing radio, and I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning to do morning radio, and I was going out in Astoria, New York, behind my building, and I was putting the garbage out, and there were these 4 or 5 kittens eating out of the garbage, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. Someone's going to have to deal with this. And then, like in another night, a few days go by, I go back out with the garbage. You're still eating garbage. I said, someone's going to have to do something about this. And then by the 3rd time, I'm like, I guess I'm going to be the guy. So I trap these cats, and I bring them into my apartment. I trap them in a shoebox with cat food, 1 at a time. 4 kittens, bring them into my apartment, not knowing that if a cat is eating on its own, it's feral. It's a wild animal. It's not a kitten. It's like bringing a mongoose into your apartment. So I bring these cats. It's crazy. One of them tries to jump out a window, climbs up the screen. It wedges itself between the window and the screen. 2 of them are behind the stove. One of them gets stuck on a glue trap for a mouse. I got to rip it off. It was chaos. And all of them hated me. They were just like, it was sad because all I wanted was friends. And then I couldn't get them out of my apartment.
So you kept them?
I kept 2 of them. It's hard to get rid of feral cats, but 2 of them have made it to Los Angeles. They're living a very nice life for.
Are they affectionate, really?
They come around. They come around, yeah. But I like animals that I have to earn their love. It seems that way with me and women, cats.
Are the cats in the garage?
No, I don't let them in the garage. Ed Helms almost died of an allergy attack in my garage. And they don't even go in there. But he was wheezing, and I couldn't stop the interview. I felt bad for him.
Well, if he died, it was good press. We have some social media questions for you.
Okay.
Baggy Moonrock on Twitter, do you miss your vices, and how do you deal with it?
I don't miss my vices because I kind of, you find other ways, a little healthier ways to fill them. Like I still on the nicotine. I drink a lot of coffee. I tend to. I don't miss the vices. I don't miss that way of life.
Bill D on Twitter asks, will you be writing more books?
If they pay me to do it, I will write another one.
Rodrigo on Twitter wants to know, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Hopefully alive and somewhat content and having health insurance.
Anthony Trivelette on Facebook wants to know, are you finally happy?
I have some peace of mind, but I feel like I'm being true to myself, and that's as close to happiness as I can get. I have a hard time identifying joy or happiness, but I feel like I've finally arrived at who I am, and that's good.
Well, happiness is like a lack of unhappiness, right? I mean,
sure, yeah. Like, okay, so occasionally, like, I'm happy right now.
I'm happy the Dodgers win. I'm happy.
Yeah, you get that.
I'm happy the kid did good in school.
Yeah.
There are moments.
Right,
of
you can't be happy all the time. That's
You'd be
ridiculous.
crazy.
Yeah.
But you can be unhappy all the time. In your past, you were unhappy a lot.
I was angry and unhappy. I like to just think of it as a struggle.
Okay, we got a little game of if you only knew. I throw it out, you answer. Greatest stand-up comedian of all time.
Richard Pryor.
Up-and-coming comic we better watch out for.
Nate Bargatze.
We haven't seen him.
He's great. He's doing a show. Fallon's producing a pilot with him. He's great. He's from Tennessee. He's hilarious.
Guess you're most nervous about interviewing.
Iggy Pop.
Why?
I don't know, because he's Iggy Pop. I didn't know what was going to happen.
How would you describe your style of interviewing?
Sort of needy and intrusive.
And late.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on. What makes you laugh every time?
Brian Regan. Anything that he does.
Who is he?
He's a stand-up.
Yeah?
He's hilarious.
I'm lost. I don't know him.
It's all right.
What scares you the most?
Vindictive women and fire.
In that order.
Yeah.
Most terrifying stand-up experience?
Being sent home from Australia because I bombed so badly.
They sent you home?
Yeah.
How did they tell you this? Go home?
Well, it was pretty apparent that it wasn't going well. It was a long time ago. It was probably in the early 90s. I went over there and I don't know, I just had one of those experiences.
Were you in a club?
It was a big club. There's like 400 people there. I did a week of previews and I got on stage, Larry, and at that time, I was standing on stage and for 45 minutes, all I could hear were the embers of my cigarette burning. Just silence, and it was just brutal.
Oh,
like I felt myself, I left my body, like some part of me left and said, I'll meet you backstage, I can't handle this. And he went back to the wings. And the day after, the guy's like, this isn't working out.
That's the stand-ups have it. Comics never have that. I mean, singers never have that.
Yeah,
musicians, how do you know?
No, it's like, let the band take it.
TV show you're embarrassed to say that you watch.
House Hunters.
You watch that?
No, with a girl, sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do.
If you could have one thing named after you, what would it be?
Maybe an animal shelter or a microphone.
If you weren't a comedian, what would you be?
I'd like to think I would be a teacher, but I have no idea what I would teach. I'd be a professor of me.
Best advice you ever got?
Recently, I spoke to a woman that I knew years ago. Her name is Dragon, and I'm going through some difficult times, and she looked at me and said, "Don't waste the pain." And I thought that was genius.
You're a genius.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marc.
Nice to see you.
Marc Maron, don't be late next time.
I won't.
I'll come again to the garage.
Okay.
I'd like to see the garage.
Deal.
Thanks to my guest, Marc Maron. Catch his comedy special, Thinky Pain, available now on Netflix. And be sure to tune in to WTF with Marc Maron and available for download on iTunes. And you can find me on Twitter at King's Things, and I'll be on his show soon whenever they play.
I'll do it.
And I'll see you next time.